All right, I'm gonna try this. I am in Seville right now, and it is Wednesday, the 30th of April, 2025. I arrived in Seville yesterday. Quite a bit has happened in the past several days. This is my first trip to Europe. My first trip away from North America, other than going to a border town in Mexico and Toronto once when I was 15. This is the first time I've been out of the United States. I've been studying Spanish pretty hard for about a year and a half now. I've been working really hard at that. I studied Spanish in college, but it never really stuck. And so, kind of, I guess partly because of that, I decided I wanted to go to Spain, and so here I was. I arrived Sunday, April the 27th, about 8:30 in the morning, Madrid time, in Madrid. It's around, so I got there, and I was super jet lagged, so I basically didn't do much that day. And it took me a while just to find my place that I was staying at. So I kind of slept in. Monday morning, I slept until probably 10 o'clock, 10:30, I'd say. And finally got up, went out. Electricity was still working in the apartment that I was at when I went out. And I left and walked down the block to a coffee shop. In the coffee shop, the electricity was out. And so I couldn't, FYI, I had no euros. I only had my Visa card, which had worked the day before the few times I'd tried it in most places. And I had a lot of US cash. I thought I was gonna just be able to exchange that out for euros easily, and that turned out not to be the case. So at any rate, the coffee shop I was at, lights are out, and I thought that's weird that the lights are out there, but they were working in my apartment. Well, it just coincidentally, it must have the power went out between the time that I was walking from my apartment to that coffee shop. So I spent the next 12 hours basically without money, and not with a whole lot of food because I couldn't buy any food. The night before, I had bought some cereal and milk, and I basically ate cereal for all of Monday. I made the best of it. I walked around, went down to, I think, the Royal Palace and a large church next to it. And just did a lot of walking. I tried to exchange euro or dollars for euros with a few merchants, but no one wanted to do it. I don't know. I guess they thought it was a scam or whatever, but they just wouldn't do it. Or they just didn't want to do it. So anyway, Tuesday, April 29th, after the power came back, and the power came back on about midnight, April 29th, Tuesday. And I had a plan. I was like, and I will say I managed to buy a little bit of food because I found an Asian grocer that was willing to, they weren't really a grocer, but they were like a little convenience store. They were willing to accept dollars. And so I bought, like, the best I could find there was like some more cereal and ramen. And I was like, I don't know how long this is gonna last. I just wanna have calories in case it lasts for a while. So I've got, I wanna starve. So I just bought, a bunch of cereal and ramen, and they gave me some euros back. And also the guy at the hotel, or not the hotel, but the flat that I was staying at was a real nice guy at the front. He let me exchange $20 US for about 15 euros. So I also had that, but that was towards the end of the whole ordeal Monday night. So when the power came back on, I immediately ran down to the ATM and pulled out about 300 euros. At that point, I didn't care what the exchange rate was. So FYI, in the future, always come with euros or come with local money. Don't have no money, no cash when you get to a country. That was my bad. Tuesday, April 29th, I was supposed to take a train from Madrid to Seville, and that train station was a madhouse. I talked to some British people or something, and they indicated that this was not normal. My train was delayed. It was one of those high-speed trains. It was delayed by probably 5 hours. So I sat in that train station for about 5 hours, not really knowing if I was going to get on a train or not. And I was like, well, shit, I already have my place set to stay in Seville, so that I'll be out, and I don't have any place to stay in Madrid. You know, for all I know, I'm going to be, you know, staying on the streets tonight. So that would have been interesting. Probably not. I mean, by then I had cash. I could have, you know, and the credit card's working. I could have gone to a hotel, so that may be a little bit hyperbolic. At any rate, after about 5 hours, you know, my train was supposed to leave at 1, finally left about 4 o'clock, 4:30. I arrived in Sevilla about 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'd say. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this power outage that happened here. Normally I wouldn't comment too much on other people's countries or tell other people in their countries how they should run their countries, you know, except maybe in very general terms. You know, my concerns are with my country and bettering my country primarily. But since, you know, I was here and I had to experience it, even just as a tourist, which was probably in some ways worse because I had no support system. I knew nobody. You know, my Spanish is still, I'm still working on my Spanish. So I think I've earned the right to talk about this a little bit and comment on it. I think the effect now, from what I've watched on Spanish television and from what I'm interpreting and also from what I'm reading on places like X and things like that, is there's now going to be this effort to overwhelm us with technicalities about what happened. So we're going to talk, you know, they're going to talk about atmospheric conditions that caused this, you know, freak atmospheric conditions, a cable that failed, you know, some bureaucrat somewhere who's going to be the scapegoat, and they're going to say it's all his fault. One of the funny things I saw was someone was saying in the news, oh, the problem is the Spanish system, electrical system, is too integrated. And if it hadn't been so integrated, we wouldn't have had this whole cascade effect, and it would have been fine. Well, I find that funny because I'm from Texas, and I was there in, I think it was 2021, when there was a massive cold snap, you know, probably the coldest it had been in Texas in 100 years. And that was a precipitating event for knocking out the system there, although I still think that was due to turning away from coal and moving towards natural gas. You know, the socialist technocrats will all poo-poo with that and say that no, that's not the reason. It's because of these technicalities. Again, they always want to go into their little technicalities. So anyway, they were saying in Spain that it's because the system is too integrated, and if it hadn't been so integrated, it would not have failed. Well, when the power went out in Texas in 2021, Texas is isolated, its power grid. And what did they say then? Oh, the problem is the Texas power grid is too isolated from the rest of the nation. If you guys in Texas had been integrated with the rest of the nation, it never would have happened. So the socialist left is always going to go with, you know, whatever is a convenient excuse, and there'll usually be contradictory excuses in different situations to cover up, you know, for the problems that they've created. What I want to focus on instead of the technicalities, I don't want to get drowned out in the technicalities of, you know, there was too little inertia, too much inertia. You can see all of that on the, you know, power inertia or whatever on the, and I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. I want to focus on the ideology. There's an ideology and a worldview that focuses on things other than human well-being. It generally goes by the name of environmentalism. And to a true environmentalist, and I'm not talking about people who just, you know, make it about clean air and clean water, blah, blah, blah. The essence of environmentalism is to view mankind as a parasite or a cancer that needs to be kept in check, if not wiped out altogether. And this is what the true environmentalists, what they would call the radical environmentalists, but I just call environmentalists, want. And the result of this attitude is going to be no focus on electrical generation. There's not going to be a focus on building up the coal power plants, the natural gas power plants, especially the nuclear power plants. These are the things that we need to build up in order to maximize human well-being and human prosperity. And this ideology, it just needs to be stomped out. It just needs to be stomped out of existence. The universities need to be reformed, and they need to stop calling for this BS. The reporters and the media need to stop calling for environmentalism. They need to stop calling for the destruction of our technological civilization. They need to stop calling for the destruction of our power generation systems. All of this needs to be replaced with a pro-human, pro-individual, anti-collectivist ideology. Now, interestingly, I did a little research, and I don't claim to be an expert on Spanish politics. According to Wikipedia, the current Prime Minister of Spain is Pedro Sanchez, and he is the leader of the Socialist Workers' Party and has been, and they've been in power in Spain since 2018. Socialists today and environmentalists are basically the same. They're both the same anti-individual, anti-human philosophy, and they need to be done away with. They need to be gotten rid of. If the people of Spain want to stop these power outages, then they need to get rid of their socialists. Now, let's consider where there are regular blackouts all the time today. And there's two places that come to my mind immediately. The first is South Africa, and the second is Cuba. South Africa is basically a racialist, anti-white, black collectivist political social system at this point. Their entire desire is to promote racialized collectivism, basically. And their power generation systems, it's just falling apart. They have rolling blackouts all the time. You can look it up. It's been that way for probably 20 years. The second place that I always think of whenever we talk about regular blackouts, and most people probably do too, is Cuba. Cuba has regular rolling blackouts. Basically, their power generation consists of oil burning power plants, and they used to import oil from Venezuela and before that from the Russians. But both of those sources have dried up, and now Cuba just has regular power outages. Plus, their power generation systems are just completely antiquated. And Cuba is basically a socialist collectivist state. It's not as bad as someplace probably like North Korea. It's kind of like a what I'd call like a banana republic, socialist state at this point. It's not as totalitarian as, like I said, North Korea. But their ideology and, what they want, what they explicitly call for is socialist collectivism. And again, the destruction of the individual, and they're not at all concerned with the welfare of human beings as individuals. So, like I said, I'm here in Sevilla. You can kind of see, this is where I'm staying. It's a nice place. I'm taking a break. It was raining earlier. The sun has come up now, and I was also taking a break because my feet are just, I'm 50 years old and can't keep up with the same pace anymore. But I've seen a lot of neat things. Saw some Roman ruins. I saw, well, mostly Roman ruins because that was what interested me. And to kind of tie back in with what we've been talking about, or what I've been talking about here, the Roman Empire fell at root, I think, because of certain thoughts and certain ideologies and certain philosophies that turned the Romans against the more individualistic and outwardly expansive, attitude that the Romans had, that had allowed them to conquer, much of Europe and the known world at that time, or at least, the European portion. And eventually their society fell. And I think, if we continue down this road of environmentalist, collectivist socialism, we're going to see more of these apagones, as they say in Spanish, which are blackouts, and just a gradual destruction of our society. Probably at some point there will be, a big shift and, big destruction. They were able to kind of get the lights back on, within a day, but next time, who knows? It may be weeks. Hopefully I'm not stuck in Spain for the rest of my life. So that's about it. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my vacation and maybe learn Spanish a little better. Bye.